Good morning, Bardstown in Nelson County, and welcome to Bradford and Brooks. Jim Brooks and Margie Bradford with you this morning, and well, it's a little dreary outside, Margie, but I didn't have to wear a coat. I just wore long sleeves, so I'll take that. It's not raining or snowing yet.
I know, yet. Well, are you getting your turkey already?
Well, as you just about every year, the big question is, how long do you let it defrost in the sink before you pop it in the oven, because you hate to leave it out overnight. And
I just put it in the refrigerator for 3 or 4 days.
Well, we didn't get it in the refrigerator soon enough.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right.
So that's going to be the question. How long do we, when is it thawed? And I'm like, why didn't you just buy some sliced turkey at the deli, But that's part of Thanksgiving tradition.
Where's the tradition in there, Jim? That's what I want to know.
Oh, well, we'll have plenty of...
throw a little cranberry sauce on it there, maybe. But.
We'll have plenty of
and no gravy.
Well, we got to.
We got to have gravy.
I'm going to go home and tomorrow morning actually. My son brought a guest home for the weekend from college, so he's going to peel potatoes with us. So that's a time-honored tradition that.
It's a tradition that's honored in my house too. Whoever is there that's junior to me gets to peel the potatoes.
Well, the potatoes. Now, this is a job my son had done every year, and he's complained every year. Oh, got to do the potatoes, and so to make him earn it a little bit, I give him the knife and I get the peeler. So I'm just peeling those potatoes, and he's peeling them with a knife. Well, I'm like, anyway, he's used to it. Yeah. So anyway, our guest he's bringing home will have that honor to peel potatoes with us, because there's nothing better than homemade mashed potatoes.
Oh, and you always run out. Everybody always said, "No more potatoes."
Well, I don't know how many you all peel, but my wife usually gets a 5-pound bag, and we peel every one of them.
Yeah, well,
so we have a mess of mashed potatoes.
I do a little more than that. Yeah, more than that.
Well,
I got about 25 people coming.
Oh well,
so.
Yeah, you probably better go at least 10 pounds. Maybe more. All right. Well, Margie, we know Thanksgiving's on everybody's mind, and I know it's going to change. Office schedules and garbage pickup. I heard them say during the break at the top of the hour. Well, anyway, let's quit yapping about Thanksgiving. I do want to let everybody know we have a very special guest with us today that we've been, who's fairly new, at least to planning and zoning here, Mr. Shawn Moore, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir.
And tell us, in the preview I posted on social media, I mentioned that you bring considerable experience to Nelson County, and so tell us a little bit about your background in planning and zoning, and then go into a little bit about why planning and zoning is important. I know that. I've known developers through the years, and to them it was just, it was a pain that they had to deal with, builders sometimes. But anyway, but planning and zoning has a critical role in both the city and the county, and so that's kind of one of the things I want to look at and why it's important. And and I know I have heard politicians say, well, I'm going to make it more user-friendly, which usually means make it easier for the builders. But anyway, planning and zoning is really important. And tell us a little bit about your experience and what you bring to the table.
Okay. Well, I started this odyssey that I call my career back in 2004. I was hired as a zoning enforcement officer in Danville, where I spent about 18 months learning the basics of planning and zoning. But mostly I was doing field enforcement work. I go out and verify setbacks and respond to complaints and issues that needed to be addressed that you had to go out in the office to do.
Right.
In 2005, about 18 months after I started, the planning director in Harrodsburg gave his notice, and they sent out resumes, and I had spoken with a land surveyor who I'd been doing a lot of work with, and she said, you should apply for that job. And I was like, I've been doing this 18 months. I'm not qualified to run a planning commission. She said, yes, you are. And so I talked to my wife about it, and we kind of kicked it back and forth, and I was like, well, I'll just interview. So I went over and interviewed, and the very next day I was hired. So in 2005, I started over there somewhere around 2005, 4th of July weekend, somewhere right in there. And I've been there for 19 years until Bardstown came a-knocking.
Is it Danville's Mercer?
Well, no, the Danville job was Danville and Boyle County's Planning
okay,
Commission, and then
right.
when I left, there, I went to Mercer County and took over Harrodsburg and Mercer County's Joint
Right.
Planning Commission there.
Right. Now, did Danville have city and county-wide zoning?
Yes.
And Mercer County too?
Yes. So Danville's was a joint zoning ordinance. It had city and county regulations within one ordinance.
Right.
Mercer County had an ordinance for the city and then a separate ordinance for the county, but it was still county-wide zoning with the exception of Bergen, which is the friendliest little city, at least according to their welcome signs. But yes, so we dealt with that. Now in 2007, after I'd been there a couple of years, the Division of Water came to visit, and they said, we have to do a community assistance visit. They call it a CAV. It's just an acronym. And basically what that is they come in and they review your floodplain management regulations and make sure you're doing everything in accordance with what FEMA's guidelines set forth for you. And they found out that the zoning, or that the flood ordinance stipulated that the zoning administrator was supposed to be the floodplain manager. But when I got there in 2005, it was the building inspector. And before him was the city engineer. So they said either change the ordinance to give that job to the building inspector or give that job to the zoning guy. So the zoning guy got the job because they didn't want to change the ordinance. So I started doing floodplain administration in 2007 and managed all of that, floodplain development, permits, compliance with FEMA regulations and everything. And been doing that ever since till I got here.
So basically, the things you were doing there, you just do the same things here. It's not that you don't have to deal with that many differences between the counties. Well, I'm just asking.
I'm doing the same job here that I was doing there, but it's much more intense here. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
Bardstown is a hustling, bustling community with constant expansion and growth, and we've got residential development, we've got commercial development, we're having industrial expansions, and that stuff was going on on a limited basis in Mercer County, but it was just starting to take off when I had the opportunity to come over here. So everything is new. So I mean, ordinances are what they are.
Right.
You lay out your subdivision, or you lay out your regulations. Here's all my different districts, and what we line those out so that we create uniform areas for development. Lot sizes here stay the same, or minimum lot sizes are this. These are the things you're allowed to do by right. These are the things you're allowed to do conditionally. Which conditional uses are things that are not normally associated with a particular zoning district, but you could allow them if you place limitations or conditions upon their operation. For example, one of the hotbed items right now in Bardstown is short-term rentals.
Absolutely.
Like them, don't like them, whatever, they need to be addressed.
Sure.
So, and then there's obviously prohibited uses, which is basically anything that's not allowed by right or by condition, you're not allowed to do it in that zoning district.
Right.
Reasoning for that puts you into the categories of, we don't want to have incompatible land uses next to one another.
Right.
Grain silo operations next to a $500,000 home subdivision full of $500,000 homes, but they probably wouldn't like that. So we want to try to regulate and help guide the development in the right manner.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, of course, in an old town, sometimes you have incompatible uses that are basically grandfathered in.
Yes.
They've been there forever.
Yes.
So So, until they cease operation, I guess they're just grandfather, the grandfathering didn't apply to anyone else except that business, from that time. But
That's correct. And they're classified as pre-existing non-conforming uses is
Right.
what you deem them. And you can't take the use away from them just because planning and zoning comes along and gets created.
Right.
And where we want to put that zoning district doesn't allow for what you're doing. You can't just take the use from them. They get to continue using it. So that's the grandfathering protection.
Yeah, it's like some of the signs that some of the businesses have been there a long time. They're grandfathered in.
They are.
But if they
They're
take them
non-conforming.
down, they couldn't put the same sign back up.
Now, yes, that's correct. If you read the statutes on pre-existing stuff, it's not to be encouraged, which means when it ceases to function again, you can't just change owners and the new guy gets to do
Right.
what the old guy was doing. Or if a house burns down and it's too close to the property lines, there is a little clause that allows you to do rebuild within 12 months. You can go back exactly the way it was. You can't do any closer to property lines or whatnot. But after that 12-month period, it loses its grandfathering protection, and any new development of that property would be required to meet the rules in place today.
I didn't know that. The role of the Board of Adjustments is to address non-conforming. Say I want to build a garage, and I'm too close to the property line, and I want to go a foot, 18 inches over that setback or side. I don't know the exact term you use.
Setback, side yard setback. Okay.
You would apply for you would go to get a conditional use, I guess.
No, you'd apply for a variance.
Variance. I'm sorry. That's
Variance.
right. That's right.
So Board of Adjustments has control over three things, basically. Conditional uses, as I mentioned, those are things that are not normally associated with a zoning district, but can be if you place limitations on them. Variances are authorizations they're basically
They can vary
legal
from-
authorization to vary beyond the setbacks that are established for the zoning district. And then they also deal with appeals. If somebody feels that I've injured or aggrieved them, or anyone in the zoning administrator has erred in a ruling, they have the right to file an appeal on my decision, and that oversight authority rests with Board of Adjustments.
Okay. All
And
right.
then we also deal with non-conforming uses, but not a whole lot. It doesn't happen a whole lot.
Right. Well, an example, I guess, of a conditional use would be a guy that has a home business, perhaps. Mm-hmm. That would
Home
probably-
occupations.
Home occupation, and conditional uses live and expire with that person who has it.
That's
It
correct.
doesn't continue to any new owner.
That's correct. In fact, when I got here, we placed a limitation or a condition on the approval of the ones that we've issued so far in the 2 months I've been here, that stipulate that the conditional use permit becomes null and void upon sale or transfer of the property.
Right.
Because when you do this, I'll give you a good example. Let's say somebody's running a marina on the lake, on a lake. And that marina is operating on a conditional use permit, and they want to sell it to the new owners. Well, the new owners may not do things the same way as the current owner does. So if he's making changes to that, then we need to get the conditional use permit in his name and find out what he wants to do, and then we can place conditions on it based on what he's asking for.
Right. Okay. I've attended these hearings, and actually, and I've heard so many people talk about, well, these are just hoops we have to jump through. No, they're protection for the person who has the use, but also neighbors, and protects property values. And I think that people sometimes lose sight of the fact that, planning and zoning, is how important it is to a county. And I'll tell you, as I said before the show, that becomes very evident when you go to a county that doesn't have countywide
Right.
zoning, and you have the opportunity for such mismatched land uses right next to each other.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not an expert on anything zoning, but that stood out to me the first time I visited the county I told you about. Just driving down, going to another community inside the county, it was like that. You wouldn't see that in Nelson County because that wouldn't have been allowed. But anyway,
It's funny you say that. when you all drive through a town you've never been to before, you look at the buildings and the architecture
Oh, right.
and all the trees and as a zoning guy who's been doing this for 20 years, I look at the illegal signs that are placed in the right-of-ways down the road as I'm driving down the road. I don't see the buildings and stuff. I see the jobs signs
Yeah.
or free diabetes test strip signs, okay? That's what I see, and I can see them for miles. Well, it seems like it anyway. But yeah, it's catered to the lifestyle that you lead with your career, and I see things differently. But we get back to the variance part when you're talking about variances. Variances are very specified on what you can do. Now you're talking about dimensional terms, how tall a sign can be, how big it can be, how close I can build to a property line. When you issue variances on those types of properties, you issue that variance to that property, it's forever. And it stays with the property regardless of who owns it. So the Board of Adjustments has a series of things that they have to take into consideration when doing that. One, is there something unique to this property or in the same zoning district or in the general area? What's unique about this that they need to have a variance? Would the granting of the variance adversely affect public safety, health, and welfare? Does it alter the essential character of the area? Does it cause a hazard or nuisance to the general public, or does it allow for, say, an unreasonable circumvention of the rules? Now, that's kind of a gray area where that's an interpretation. And then the other thing that you have to really take into consideration is the applicant asking for a variance based on actions that they took that caused them to have the variance? Meaning, did I do this and got caught? And now I'm trying to get permission after the fact?
Right.
I can tell you for a fact that Mercer County was a big I'll get permission if I get caught community. Not so much here. And I'm really happy about that because I want to figure out how to help people do what they want to do.
Sure.
So,
Now, that's an important part of your job, too. Planning and zoning isn't to limit what you can do. It's your planning and zoning is to help you make what you want to do possible, to find a way to do it within regulations.
that's correct. And that's has always been my role as far as I saw the job, is not to get in people's way, but to find the solutions that to do what they want to do and figure out how to best make that happen. And if we can do that, let's go do it. All right, let's move on. If we can't do it, then I feel like there's an obligation on my part to see if we can come up with an alternative solution. It may not be exactly what you wanted, but if you can live with that, then let's go do that.
Right.
And then there's the third option, which means if I can't get one of those two figured out, you have to say no.
Yeah.
And I don't like doing that. But, that's not the philosophy of normal planning directors around the country. A lot of people wield that power as a zoning administrator as a big hammer. And they want to, yes, no, this is the way it's going to be. Well, it's not. This is real life, real people, real concerns, and we have to work through that. Try to figure out if the best ways to handle situations. So,
Do you run into many people who think, well, it's better to ask forgiveness than to ask for permission and go ahead and do it before it gets before?
I've had my share of people who have that thought process.
I know of somebody who did that.
There are, there's all kinds of people. And I think most people understand, it's a necessary, they call it a necessary evil. It's a necessary evil because what we really do is all designed for the protection of everybody.
Right.
For their property values, for their personal safety, for their health, their welfare. Even if they don't understand why sometimes.
Right.
What's that stuff that you have to do for your own good, even if you don't want to? Kind of like that.
Yeah.
But yes.
All right. The planning regulations. I know that some elected officials in the past, covering local government, have complained about the regulations. And prior administrator used to remind them that your government body is the one who approved the regulations.
That's correct.
And that the planning administrator's job is just to hold everybody to the same regulations. No favoritism. But I mentioned grandfathered uses, or sometimes people will look at that instance of a business that was a use or whatever the grandfathered in, and say, well, they can do that, why can't I? And I think a lot of times people make assumptions that maybe that person got a special treatment or something like that. And I think that, if you have questions about that, the thing to do is to contact your office.
That's correct.
And and find out. And so many properties have different, and I don't know, maybe different setbacks, but never assume that you can place what you want where you want to put it without checking with what the regulations are.
That gets people in trouble more than anything else is setbacks. They're not, for some reason, and I've been teaching this forever. People think that their property line starts where the pavement stops.
Right.
And in actuality, it doesn't. It stops where the right-of-way ends, and the right-of-way extends beyond the roadbed.
Right.
Into ditches, or in residential subdivisions, you have grass strips and then sidewalks. And ordinarily, the property lines in residential subdivisions is at the back side or the house side of a sidewalk. That's where you take those measurements from.
Right.
So they'll go out there and think, all right, I'm putting this in the right spot, and come out and find out they're about 12 feet closer than they were supposed to be.
Right.
So that's not uncommon. Now, does that mean it was done on purpose? It's hard to say, but you have to treat those on a case-by-case basis, which is the whole point of board of adjustments.
It starts where?
It starts where the right-of-way ends.
Okay.
So, say for example, most streets.
Like up in your yard.
Oh, yes, ma'am. But it's actually not your yard. It's actually the city or the county's right-of-way.
It's the yard you mow and take care of.
That's correct. Yes. So if you've got a pavement, let's say right-of-ways are pretty common at 50 feet.
Right.
So 25 foot from the middle of the road in each direction constitutes the right-of-way. Well, that might be 8 or 9 feet in the grass.
Right.
All right. But the property line's actually here where the right-of-way stops, because the city or the county owns that entire 50-foot width. So to solve a lot of those problems, I tell people, and particularly when I've got plats in front of me where I can see the properties with the right-of-ways, and saying, okay, so you got a 40-foot right-of-way, your setback is 50 feet from the front property line. So if we take half of the right-of-way and we add it to that 50 and we go 70, if you'll measure from 70 foot from the center of the road, that's where your house can sit. That's 50 foot from the front property line. And for some reason, that's easier for people to wrap their head around than imagining an imaginary right-of-way that's extended out into the grass.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
Yeah, and I know right-of-way is always an issue around election time, because so many election signs get people assume this is safe, it's good, and they're actually in either the state, city, or county right-of-way. Their signs are, and oftentimes whoever's in charge of enforcement, those signs will wind up either behind City Hall or wherever they wind up.
Jim, I tell you what, political campaign signs have their own degree of protection. They come courtesy of the elected officials who created the regulations to protect their signs. Now, we all know that signs are not, temporary yard signs, things like that are not supposed to be placed within the right-of-ways.
Right.
The worst dressing down I ever got in my 20 years was over a political campaign sign. So I was sent out to go out and pull illegal signs for the day, and I went out and I pulled a couple of campaign signs, and I'd moved them from the right-of-way onto somebody's private property and just stuck them back in the ground. Well, guess what? They were not a supporter of that particular candidate, and they let me know. So what we decided to do, now I don't know how it's handled here, and I don't really deal with signs anymore, was we would collect the signs up for the candidates and then reach out to the candidate and say, hey, there's a bunch of signs we had to take up. Come get them, and you reuse them wherever else. And that worked fine.
Yeah.
But yes, that was a very naive mistake on my part, was taking a campaign sign out of the right-of-way and putting it on somebody's private property. Not a good idea.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you made the assumption that person put it there.
I just was getting it out of the right-of-way is all I was doing. I just didn't
Right.
realize, oh yeah, well that person might not be a supporter of that particular candidate for the office.
Yeah, I can see where they.
And it turned out I was right. They were not a supporter of that person. So
Pretty
yes.
touchy.
Yes.
Well, at least it's not that job doesn't lie with your office.
No, I believe the city's taking that
Yeah.
responsibility,
Yeah.
so I don't have to worry about those. So now I can start looking at the architecture and the trees and stuff, which is great.
Of course, summer yard sale signs are always, I see those all the time, nailed on utility poles
Yeah,
or.
that's not supposed to be done either.
No,
But
Well,
they
those
kinda-
are such short-term things.
But they don't take them down. There'll
Well,
be the yard
well,
sale
they-
signs
yeah,
up
they
weeks
should,
old,
yeah.
But now the police at times, local Bardstown police sometimes they'll take them down. And I know a couple times, at least they've gone to the house where the yard sale is, and said, with this, you got a sign up, you can't have it here. On a pole, you can put it off the right of way. So anyway, at least there's an education component there, because nobody really wants to break the law. But you can look at some of the utility poles in town, and you can see remnants of many signs going years back. So that seems like the standard procedure, and people will continue to follow that. All right, we are at the bottom of the hour, Shawn, so let's take a commercial break. You're listening to Bradford Brooks and our special guest, Planning and Zoning Administrator Shawn Moore, and talking all things planning and zoning. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back to Bradford
Keep
and
that
Brooks.
thought.
Jim Brooks, Margie Bradford, and our very special guest this morning, Shawn Moore, who's Planning and Zoning Administrator here in Nelson County now. And Shawn, it's appreciate you taking time to come on today.
well, like they say at Chick-fil-A, it's my pleasure. So,
Oh, and speaking of Chick-fil-A,
All right.
yeah,
were we speaking of Chick-fil-A?
during the break, I think
Did you
we-
want me to announce that Chick-fil-A's development plans have been approved and will be coming to Bardstown very shortly?
Yes, well, you made a lot of
Good.
people happy with that announcement.
Oh yeah,
I know.
My wife was ecstatic. Of course, you hear rumors on social media, and sometimes you have to question the source. Is this real? Is it going to happen? Because we hear, you see things like this all the time. Well, I hear such and such is coming to town, and there's nothing happens beyond the rumor.
Well, I
Right.
can't give you a timeline on it, but
Right.
I can tell you that the plans were submitted and we've issued permits for it.
And where,
So,
tell the audience where that is.
it's going to be out near Bethlehem Way on 245.
Okay.
So you should probably start seeing some construction sometime soon. Of course, everything's weather driven,
Sure,
in this,
sure.
particularly this time of year.
Yeah.
So what could be a 4-month project could be July before they actually
Right.
open it up
Right.
for chicken sandwiches and stuff.
Right.
Great.
Right. Well, a lot of restaurants. Now, I told you during the break, I'd heard complaints that people say, well, our regulations for development are so strict that it keeps restaurants away. But I think if you do a little research, you'll find that restaurants usually have requirements for traffic, how much traffic an area gets, and population and potential customers. They're not going to build a restaurant or an outlet where they don't feel like they have a sufficient customer base to draw from.
That's correct. Most of the time, you'll find out that these companies, it's an ongoing problem, particularly in Harrodsburg, Mercer County for us, not so much here, but there, well, we don't get any restaurants. We can't get anybody to come to town.
Right.
And they don't understand that the demographic models that these companies use, these engineering guys, they want to know that there's so many people of certain age group. I mean, it's literally that intent.
Oh, yeah.
Within a certain radius of where this potential site's going to be. And if they can't get that population density to match up, they
They're
just
not
cross it
gonna
off their
come.
list and they move on.
Right.
Now, the other downside to it was when we did manage to struggle and get a business to come to town, they get all excited about it, but then they wouldn't patronize it. And then they'd end up closing.
Oh.
And it's a shame too,
Yeah,
because
because people
millions and millions of dollars get
Yeah.
invested in these projects.
yeah, they
People don't
do.
realize the money that's involved.
Right.
I mean, just to open a McDonald's, it's like almost $3 million from the time you buy the piece of land until you sell your first hamburger.
And didn't you say that there might be another McDonald's coming?
I received a couple of email inquiries about a potential site for a second location at McDonald's.
But no, nothing.
They haven't formally submitted
Yeah,
yet,
right.
but I anticipate to receive that probably within the next, sometime between now and
So
Christmas, and we'll
they
start looking
evidently
at it.
think that the population is big enough and of the right demographics for them to put another one in.
That's right. And then you run into the whole situation of people they don't really understand. It's like, well, we've already got $6 Generals. Why do we need a seventh one? We shouldn't be approving that. But that's not the way things work. The way things work is that, and I'm going to use the Dollar General, not that I'm throwing them under the bus, because they're great. They are great. You need to run and go get a loaf of bread and a gallon of milk, and there's one a mile and a half away. You're going to go there and you're going to get it.
Yeah.
That's fine, because I don't have to go all the way into town.
I do. I mean, I think they're great too.
But theirs is the same model along that same line. If I can get, and I don't know these numbers, I'm supposition here. Let's say if I can find a commercially zoned piece of land that will serve, say, 2,000 families within 5 miles, I'm gonna build a store there. If it's permitted, if the retail is permitted in that thing, who are we to say, no, we've got too many, you can't build there?
Right.
Because that basically is taking the use of the land away from them that everybody else has the right to develop as well.
Right.
And then you get into the whole world of, we're going off to court and you're going to lose, and they're going to build their Dollar General anyway, or they're going to
Right.
build their McDonald's.
Right.
And I know sometimes it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to people, but there's always more to it behind the scenes that
Right.
people don't understand or don't take the time to inquire about.
Right, and I think sometimes, people don't realize that, like you said, the money it cost. But then also, a lot of these are owned by franchisors, and they have to have the money, and they have to see that business opportunity to be valid for them to invest in a community.
That's right.
And, the numbers don't always add up, though. From somebody on the outside looking in like me, it's like, well, it's a no-brainer. Why don't they have a store, a restaurant in this location?
Well, in some cases, it's because the company hasn't decided on it, or there hasn't been a franchisee in a nearby community. For example, Firehouse Subs is all franchisees for the most part. And they actually have limitations, radius limitations, where you can't have more than one store within a certain distance from an existing location.
So you won't be competition.
That's right. That's right. So, yes, there's always little bits and pieces that have to put the puzzle together to make a big picture.
On social media, I kind of had to laugh when the restaurant, Hardee's, when they closed. People were talking about what's going to go in that location, because it's a good location right there on the main drag.
Yeah, and it's a big lot.
And as somebody said, well, let's see, they can put two things there. They can put a Chinese restaurant or a Mexican restaurant in the front and a Dollar General in the back. Because that's like, there's memes out there on social media about, the first thing they saw on Mars when the rover landed was a Dollar General.
Yes, I've seen. Have you seen the Northern Lights? There's a meme of the Northern Lights, which shows the green and blues and pinks and everything, like you assimilate with that. And then below it says the Southern Lights, and it's a Dollar General sign lit up. So, and I'm not poking fun at Dollar General. I'm really not.
No, because they give it's like giving everyone a corner grocery store.
Yeah. To me, it's almost like, and I ask you all, do you think Dollar General knows how many stores they actually own? I've always wondered.
That's changing every day.
I think that they just load them trucks up with a bunch of stuff and they drive till they find one, and then they'll unload a bunch of stuff and they'll drive some more till they find another one. I actually wanted to create a game and hoping it would go viral on Facebook or on Instagram, where you basically let's play the DG game, where you start in your hometown and you drive to your vacation destination and count up how many Dollar Generals you got to between you get there, and see who could come up with the most depending on the trip length. But no, it's all fun. It's all in fun.
Yeah, I will tell you that, Dollar General has a great business model. Small stores, you can get in and out quick.
And affordable.
I have never shopped for groceries at a Walmart Supercenter. It's too big. I don't want to walk all that. No. I don't want to do that. I don't go there. Now, Save-A-Lot's about the biggest store I'll go into. But Save-A-Lot isn't, I live out on Louisville Road, and there's a Dollar General right there at the Samuels Road, right there, right by, a mile, less than a mile from my house. Well, guess where I go for milk? Milk, bread, dog food.
Well, they're also diversifying markets too. Now they have what's called DG markets.
Right.
Okay, and that's really more focused on small, produce and milk, bread, cheese, frozen foods, things like that. In addition to the normal, they have the traditional stores that basically have the dry goods and that kind of stuff, canned goods, dry goods, and then clothing, and the stuff that's in a Dollar General. But now there's a couple of rows dedicated to actually groceries,
Right.
which is really good too.
Yeah,
So-
because if you just want a few things and don't want to have to go spend an hour and a half or 2 hours at the grocery, you can go to the Dollar General and be out in 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, we have, Dollar General Market here, and that's my go-to grocery store. When I actually go grocery shopping, I always start there. And if you can't get it there, well, of course, you've got Save-A-Lot, Kroger. But I don't even like going at Kroger's. It's just, I go down that cereal aisle, and it's like, my eyes start glazing over. It's just too many choices, Give me the, half an aisle full, and now I just don't need to see, 300 square feet of cereal choices. But anyway,
Alvin Toffler wrote a book about that about 50 years ago.
How many different ways can you cook a Cheerio?
Okay, well, Shawn, you've been on the job now about 2 months, you say?
Just a little over, yes, sir.
All right. Just in this short amount of time, or maybe the research you did before you actually got here, what are the biggest challenges you see in Nelson County regarding planning and zoning? I know that the city and county are in the process of moving the floodplain administrator job to their respective engineers. I guess that would take one job off you or somebody in your office. But what challenges now? Let me say that there's a shortage, probably not just here, but everywhere, of single-family homes. And then when you get into affordable housing, and a lot of people blame, Airbnbs or short-term rentals taking up housing stock and things like that. And I have heard people complain that our planning and zoning regulations are to blame for the drop in housing starts of single-family homes.
I would disagree with that.
I don't agree with that either, but I think one of the issues we face is having developable land. Because I think we're just about out of places that can have sewers. And I think sewers really are the key to increasing development, I guess. I mean, that's just my theory anyway.
No, you're actually very accurate. I don't think it's as much of that, because the city and the county can extend sewer services into new areas as needed. They've created an urban service boundary or an urban service area that says this is where we anticipate these expansions to take place. The problem that I see currently about this affordable housing, and I don't say it like that, but affordable housing is, what exactly is affordable housing anymore? And I mean that in the most sincere way.
I understand.
When COVID came, my wife and I live in a house. We paid it off 18 months ago, which is why I did not move to Bardstown. I don't want a mortgage again, so I'm driving back and forth every day, and I'll do that for 5 years, and we'll talk, assuming they haven't got rid of me by then, but who knows. But regardless, when COVID came, our house, PVA had our house valued at about $145,000, which I thought was an appropriate valuation for where we live. When COVID came, the house that was next door to us, which was barely 1,000 square foot, sold for $176,000. And a house behind us, which was a 1,200 square foot ranch with a carport, sold for $195,000.
Wow.
And these housing prices just went through the roof. And then what followed along with that was the interest rates on mortgages. Now all of a sudden, and my wife, she said, honey, maybe we should consider selling our house too. And I said, and go where? I said, there's nothing in the market between $200,000 and $300,000 that you can buy. And you don't want to go the other direction. You don't want to buy less than what we have now. So there was literally a void, and it still exists today. Now, some of the things that you're talking about help contribute to it. The Airbnbs are being bought and sold by people who don't live here to make money. And that's fine. We've got regulations in place to kind of keep that under control so it doesn't get away, but it doesn't discourage it. And there's, I don't know how we're going to deal with that. We just keep doing what we're doing now. But the vast majority of Board of Adjustments cases that are being heard for both the City of Bardstown and Nelson County Board of Adjustments are short-term rentals.
Right.
Very few variances. But we just, I don't know. It's not a solution of planning and zoning. The regulations did not change.
Right.
The environment changed, or the social aspect of
Right.
what we develop now has changed. The streets still have to be a certain width. The lots still have to be a certain size. They have to have sewer, and sewer, of course, determines lot sizes in a lot of things. Because if you can't get sewer, then you're going to have larger sizes to handle septic systems or state package treatment plants or things like that that help allow for that, which means you're going to much larger lots, half-acre lots, 5-acre lots in the agricultural zones, things like that.
But from my perspective, it looks to me that, the city and county don't want to pay to extend sewers, and typically developers, if they need to have sewer extended to an area they're developing, they pay that development, and then
That's the normal process, yes. The developer installs the infrastructure.
Now, Corman's Crossing was a unique situation because private money built the sewer line all the way down 245, and that, I guess it's a force main, but that really spurred the development along 245 of having access to sewers. That's why the hospital built out there years ago.
Well, development follows the sewer lines. Always has, always will.
But I remember the county's comprehensive plan never anticipated a subdivision out that far, and then all the development that followed behind it. But anyway, it is what it is. But I don't see there's nobody, I think, maybe there is, but there's no developers who are doing extensive, sewer extensions or planning that for some development out somewhere else in the county. And I think, and you're right, it's you can have a much denser development on sewers, and there's probably some land out my way, out north of Bardstown, that would be prime for they can be developed, now, but you're going to be on larger lots, and not everybody wants an acre, or up to 5-acre lots, But
So
anyway.
what you'll find out with that on the developer part is, and you're absolutely right, they don't want to extend the services. What they want to do, and what we should encourage them to do, is infill development along what already exists.
Right.
So if I don't have to spend $1.5 million extending this sewer line out there, if I can take that $1.5 million and buy this right here that's already got sewer, I can develop this property for a third the cost. Then that's where we encourage them, is to do what's called infill development, where we're going to take care of the voids that are along our road,
Right.
and then we gradually and control how we expand out from the center of city.
Right. Now, I haven't kept up with it. Your office doesn't have the historic review board or historic zoning. Is that back in your office now or not?
It is in my office.
Okay.
And let me just throw the disclaimer out right now that I never dealt with it in Mercer County or in Danville, so I'm learning it as I go. And Cam Skinner is a young man that's been tasked.
Oh yeah, he's good.
And he explains to me, and I ask questions, and I'm trying to learn so I can get a better handle on it.
What is this?
Historic Preservation Board.
Okay.
Yeah,
The board, okay.
Because we have a substantial amount of historic property that's regulated by that board.
Right.
And that's all done in conjunction with our office as well.
Right.
right. And after following HRB, you realize that accommodating for people's wishes, and I think that's that, and for good reason. You don't want to, again, like you were saying, you don't want to prevent people from doing what they want. You want to help them make it happen within the regulations.
That's right.
All right, well, we are just about out of time, Shawn. I appreciate your time today coming in, and appreciate the expertise you bring to the county. I think we, sometimes I think planning and zoning is kind of like herding cats. You've got, and everybody's going to have a different thing they want, and they may have preconceived ideas on how to get there. That may not be within the parameters that follow the ordinances. So anyway, I think your job is greatly big part of that is education, and working with people to get where they want to go with their property. Nobody likes to be told no, but I think
I don't want to be the guy telling them no either, quite frankly. It's never fun.
People really appreciate somebody who's willing to work and help them get where they want. It may not be exactly, but it's the end result. All right, we are just about out of time. Again, Shawn, thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm happy to come and share, get to know everybody.
Well, welcome to Nelson County, and if you have anything that comes up that you think would be worthy of discussing on the air, feel free to come back. We always appreciate good conversation on radio.
Will do.
All right, that's going to do it for Bradford Brooks. We will see you next Wednesday.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, enjoy the holiday, everybody. We'll see you next week.